Exposed, 8 haunted true horror stories that reveal sinister secrets and unexplained terror. The computer screen flickered, illuminating Rachel's weary face as she pounded out the dreaded work report. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves with an eerie whisper. Everything felt too calm, too perfect. But then came the unmistakable buzz of her phone, jolting her from her focus. It was a message from Lucy's school, yet the ominous tone felt wrong. Urgent alert, lingering danger targeting students in our community. She laughed it off, thinking it was one of those tech-savvy pranks, but that mirth twisted into something more disturbing. Across the street, Rachel's neighbors, those once friendly faces from summer BBQs, suddenly seemed watchful, their curtains twitching as she passed by. Their smiles froze, morphing into tight lines of worry. She could feel eyes on her, their glares heavy. Was it just her imagination, or were the whispers louder now? Every rustle turned into a growl, every shadow became a looming figure. It was as if the very air thickened with danger. Days dragged on, and each corner of her tidy suburb began to feel like a minefield. The nights were the worst, creaking sounds echoed through the walls like a voice warning her to turn back. When she looked out the window, the streetlights cast long shadows that danced unnaturally. Lucy had befriended a boy named Tommy from across the street, but Rachel felt a chill each time he came around. An innocent child's friendship? Or was it something darker? Her instincts screamed at her to pull Lucy close, but her daughter's laughter seemed to enchant her more than any warning. Desperate for reassurance, Rachel headed to the local police station, only to be met with dismissive officers. "Everything's fine, ma'am. Just your imagination." Rage boiled inside her. They didn't see what she saw, the subtle changes in her once safe neighborhood, families peeling away like paint from old walls. She wouldn't let her fears submit to ignorance. Instead, she dove into her own investigation, peeling back the layers of Maplewood's glossy facade. Night fell, deepening her chilling discoveries. Stories of vanished parents surfaced, disappearances buried under layers of suburban normalcy. Every sound now felt amplified. Was that a whisper through the walls? Had she just imagined the scrape outside? The flickering lights heightened her nerves. Each creak sounded like something lurking, waiting. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That one fateful night, Rachel's heart raced as she stepped outside to find Lucy, her breath fogging in the cool air. Shadows danced in her peripheral vision, and the street felt wrong. Tommy stood in the streetlight's glow, a smile stretching across his face, a smile that unnerved her to her core. It wasn't innocence she saw, it was an invitation into darkness. Something sinister lurked beneath those friendly lawns and pie-baking neighbors, and Rachel could feel it closing in, the grip tightening around her and Lucy. In that moment, with the darkness encircling and the boy's smile beckoning, Rachel understood, this was just the beginning. The tension hung in the air, thick enough to slice, as she knew she was about to confront a malevolence that had its eyes set on her family. She had no choice but to face the shadows creeping closer, revealing secrets that were never meant to be uncovered. The next morning brought a gray haze that hung over Maplewood like a shroud. The sun struggled to break through, casting an ominous pallor over everything. Rachel's heartbeat thudded in her chest as she stood by the window, scanning the street for Tommy. Why did he seem to haunt her thoughts? It felt like a dangerous game, one that pulled at the edges of her reality. Lucy rushed into the room, clinging to a hastily drawn picture of Tommy and her, smiling among cartoonish flowers. "Look, Mommy. Tommy made this for me," she cheered, her eyes twinkling with innocence. Rachel's stomach twisted. Did Lucy truly know the darkness bubbling beneath such innocence? "Sweetheart, maybe we should stay inside today. How about we have a movie marathon." The words barely left her mouth when the doorbell rang. Cold dread trickled down her spine. Her limbs felt heavy as she moved toward the door, anticipation clawing at her chest. Opening it, she found Mrs. Whitmore, her neighbor who used to bring over blueberry muffins. Today, her face was drawn tight, eyes darting, filled with worry. "Rachel, we need to talk," she whispered, her voice trembling as if she was afraid someone might overhear. "It's about the kids and Tommy." Rachel pulled the door wider, beckoning her in. Once settled at her kitchen table, Mrs. Whitmore leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "I think something's wrong with that boy. The things I've heard, they don't make sense. They're terrifying." She paused, casting a glance toward the window. He doesn't act like a normal child." "What do you mean? What have you seen? Tell me." The urgency in Rachel's tone startled her. "Children have gone missing, Rachel. One by one. It's as if they vanish into thin air. All last seen with Tommy." Her gaze grew distant. "I thought it was just rumors. But those stares from the neighbors, they knew something. I felt it, too." Panic surged through Rachel, her thoughts spiraling. "But Lucy, she loves him. They play together all the time. It's not safe." Mrs. Whitmore urged. "You need to protect your daughter." Rachel felt her mind racing, grappling with the weight of this revelation. This wasn't just a child's friendship. It was a predatory instinct lurking beneath a facade of innocence. Suddenly, they heard laughter from outside, a jarring sound that intruded on their conversation. Rachel rushed to the window, her heart pounding. There was Tommy, surrounded by a group of laughing children, their faces lit with a happiness that felt disturbing against the fog that now enshrouded the neighborhood. "Why do they look so happy?" Rachel mumbled, fighting the urge to shout for Lucy to come back. "They should be afraid. Don't they understand?" "I don't know," Mrs. Whitmore said, her voice breaking. "But we have to stop them. They think it's harmless. But the men in black," she lowered her voice, "they've been taking kids in the night. I've seen them." Rachel felt herself grow cold. "Men in black? What are you talking about?" Mrs. Whitmore leaned closer, shaking her head in fear. "I shouldn't have said anything. It'll only make things worse." Rachel's mind reeled. What had once seemed like a perfect life fell apart under the weight of shadows. Every creak of the floorboards echoed like a warning. She felt trapped, suffocated by the knowledge that her suburban bliss was nothing more than a thin veneer. The laughter echoed outside again, like a siren call luring Lucy away. She turned sharply from the window, her resolve hardening. "We have to warn them." But as they prepared to head outside, the door slammed open with a force that made the walls shudder. Tommy stood there, his grin wider than ever, eyes glinting with a knowing darkness that sent icy fear crawling up Rachel's spine. "Come play with us," he sang, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "It's so much fun." The room was heavy with dread, drowning her instincts in confusion. Rachel held her breath as the shadows shifted around her, the sinister invitation hanging in the air, threatening to engulf them all. The walls seemed to close in, whispering secrets meant to be hidden. And in that moment, Rachel realized she wasn't just fighting for Lucy's innocence, but for their very survival. What lay beyond Tommy's smile? What darkness had she unleashed? As she turned to face her neighbor, both mothers shared a single, panicked look. With their hearts pounding in synchrony and the malicious laughter echoing closer, a chilling question loomed: would they dare to confront the evil of the child they had trusted with their own? The shadows in the room shifted as Tommy stepped inside, his presence overwhelming like a weight pressing onto Rachel's chest. The air thickened with a menacing energy, and even the sweet scent of the fresh-baked cookies lingering on the counter turned sour in her stomach. "Tommy, we need to talk," Rachel managed, her voice strained. She took a step forward, shielding Lucy instinctively, the drawing still clutched in her little hands. But Tommy's eyes, dark as storm clouds, held no innocence. About what? He asked, tilting his head, a humorless smile stretching over his lips. About how much fun we're having. Mrs. Whitmore stood frozen, her fear palpable as she clutched her own arms. Rachel could see the struggle in her neighbor's eyes, the silent battle between protection and the paralyzing fear of action. "Rachel, we have to get Lucy away from him," Mrs. Whitmore whispered, urgency lacing her words. Tommy's laughter rang through the air, shattering the fragile moment. "You're not going anywhere, not yet, at least." He stepped further into the room, the light flickering ominously above him as if responding to his dark essence. "Lucy!" Rachel snapped, trying to break through the haze hanging over her daughter. "Come here, sweetheart." She reached out her hand. The little girl, eyes bright from sheer delight, gripped her drawing tighter. "But Mommy, Tommy is our friend. He is so much fun." Lucy protested, the joy in her voice grating on Rachel's nerves. Tommy shot a glance at Lucy, a glint of something dark flickering behind his eyes. "Friends are always fun, aren't they, Lucy? We just want to play." He smiled that insidiously wide grin, and the air felt colder, heavier. The laughter outside grew louder, echoing through the house, a chorus of elated children, unaware of the thickening dread. Rachel could almost feel it surrounding her, wrapping like a tight noose. "We can't trust him," she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. "We need to leave now. Please." And then, she felt a sudden shift in the atmosphere, as if they had been watched all along. Rachel turned sharply to the window. Outside, in the dim light of the gray haze, dark figures began to lurk at the edges of the street, their faces hidden beneath hoods. The realization sent panic flooding through her. "Rachel, are they?" Mrs. Whitmore stammered, her voice shaking as she grasped Rachel's arm. "I think they're here for the kids." Rachel gasped, her heart hammering in her chest. Tommy's demeanor changed, his playful facade cracking. "Stop, Mommy. You shouldn't be scared." The smile faded, replaced by an eerie calm that sent a shiver down Rachel's spine. "I'll protect you, Lucy. You'll never feel scared again." Just then, the door creaked open slightly, as if inviting shadows to take form. If the men were out there, lurking, what had they been waiting for? Rachel felt a surge of terror. Was it Tommy who drew them close? Her imagination raced with nightmares. Suddenly, Lucy released her hold on the drawing and rushed toward Tommy, who beckoned her with a haunting smile. "Come on, Lucy. Let us go outside. It's so much better out there, but first, let us finish your picture, no?" Rachel screamed, lunging forward. But as she did, the darkness beyond the door pulsed, hungry and thrumming with an unknown energy. Tommy's laughter transformed into a sinister echo that filled the room. "You'll never keep her away from me." Everything inside Rachel screamed for survival as the door swung wide open. The laughter of the other children outside shifted into something low and menacing. Shadows surrounded them, closing in. Rachel felt dread gripping her throat, choking her voice. Every instinct urged her to grab Lucy and flee, but the boys stood between them, a barrier of darkness. What would it take to break free? In a moment where time stilled, Rachel caught a fleeting glimpse of the hooded figures at the door, eyes wide and glinting, waiting, watching. What had been invited into their lives? Would they be the next victims to be taken? As the sinister laughter amplified, echoing off the walls, Rachel clung to her resolve. Would she have the courage to confront the unimaginable, or would the shadows swallow them whole? And as the darkness crept closer, so did an unyielding truth: nothing was as it seemed in Maplewood. What would happen when the last innocent smile faded away? The door swung wider, as if the darkness was inviting them in. Shadows crept forward, merging with the swirls of night that had seeped into the room. Rachel's heart raced, drowning out the laughter that twisted into something unrecognizable. She felt the cold air prickling her skin, clawing at her resolve. "Lucy! Come back!" Rachel screamed, desperation sharpening her voice. But the little girl only giggled, caught in a trance, her small feet slowly padding toward Tommy. Mrs. Whitmore jerked backward, breath hitching in her throat, eyes flitting between Rachel and the door. "Lucy. Please." Mrs. Whitmore echoed, but it was too late. The boy held an unnatural allure, a gravitational pull that only the vulnerable could sense. Slowly, Tommy lifted a hand, beckoning the child closer. "You don't need to be afraid of the dark, Lucy. It's just another kind of fun." He tilted his head in a way that made Rachel's skin crawl, revealing those sharp teeth and the twist of glee crossing his face. "Fun?" Rachel shoved forward, her body shaking. "You're not a friend. Stay away from her." She lunged toward Lucy, but an invisible force pushed her back, forcing her to stumble as if the very air had become solid. The shadows thickened, sweeping in around Tommy and Lucy, almost pulsing with the rhythm of something sinister lurking just beneath the surface. A low whisper echoed through the room, slithering into her ears. "Let her go, embrace the fun." Rachel's heart sank. Tommy wasn't just speaking, he was calling for something more. The laughter outside surged, blending into a cacophony, shrill and taunting. It fed into her fear, an uninvited guest that left her mind reeling. "Get away." Rachel stumbled backward, grabbing Mrs. Whitmore's hand. They had to break free, to escape. Facing the darkness, she shouted, "We will not let you take her." The determination in her voice surprised her, but Tommy simply laughed again, the sound breaking like glass. "Courage won't protect you," he cooed, stepping aside as shadows poured through the door, writhing like black smoke. Each one was a tendril that caressed her legs, an icy touch that tried to pull her into the abyss. "Run!" Mrs. Whitmore screamed, jerking Rachel back to reality. They sprinted for the kitchen door, forcing their way through the narrow space, driven by the primal instinct to escape. But as they bolted out, the world outside shifted in disarray, a realm consumed by the shadows of the figures lurking just beyond their line of sight. "Lucy!" Rachel cried out, her voice losing strength as she turned, heart hammering against her ribcage. But the little girl was gone, drawn into the shadows with Tommy. The darkness had swallowed her whole. Terror left a weight on Rachel's chest as she stumbled into the backyard, Mrs. Whitmore at her side, both shaken and panting. In the flickering light of their porch, Rachel could see movement, the hooded figures shifting, whispering secrets in a language too ancient to understand. "Where are they taking her?" Rachel gasped, glancing over her shoulder. No sign of Tommy, no Lucy. Just open space filled with shadow, growing, curling around them like an angry serpent. "We need to get help," Mrs. Whitmore urged, but a sense of desolate dread washed over Rachel. The street felt suffocating, as if it were closing in the very moment they stepped into it. Then Rachel noticed it, the drawing. It lay abandoned on the floor, bright and innocent against the gray of the ground. The colors flickered unsettlingly as shadows danced across the paper. "What if that drawing?" Rachel muttered, piecing together fragmented thoughts. "What if it's more than just a picture?" But before she could say anything further, a chilling wind surged around them, swirling the dust of forgotten corners. The shadows flickered and twisted, and then that laughter, that sinister mirth, echoed around them once more. They realized then they were not alone. Something emerged from the darkness, something with eyes like burning coals, staring at Rachel with a hunger that made her blood run cold. The eye and the heart of Maplewood, the game had only just begun. What horrors would Rachel uncover next? Rachel's breath quickened, an icy dread tightening her throat. The entity that emerged from the shadows was not merely an illusion, it was a creature of nightmares, hulking and distorted, its eyes burning like embers in a forgotten fire. Fear threatened to consume her, but instinct pushed her to act. "Back! Go back into the house!" Mrs. Whitmore shouted, nudging Rachel forward. But the doorway felt like a trap. They hesitated, caught between the clutches of unfathomable darkness and the presence that loomed in front of them. The creature's mouth stretched into a sinister grin, jagged teeth glinting, and a voice as cold as the grave hissed, "You cannot save her." "Lucy!" Rachel screamed, her voice cracking. The confession left her lips raw and desperate. She searched the engulfing shadows, looking for any sign of the little girl. We have to find her. The hooded figures surrounding them shifted closer. They bore no faces, just shadows in the shape of a person, their hands gesturing as they muttered in unison. A chilling chant spiraled through the air, wrapping around Rachel like chains. She could feel it pulling at her sanity, their hollow whispers threatening to drag her down into their suffocating abyss. Suddenly, the winds howled, uprooting the familiar scent of autumn leaves and golden cornfields. Instead, the air thickened with something foul and palpable, like the stench of rot. Rachel choked on it, her instincts screaming for them to flee. We can't just stand here. Rachel gasped, catching a glimpse of Mrs. Whitmore's fear-stricken face. There has to be something we can do. In that moment, Rachel's eyes caught sight of the drawing, a simple depiction of Lucy, her smile radiant, surrounded by handwritten words that seemed to shimmer in the darkness. Transfixed, Rachel reached out. The air shifted, and she felt a pulse radiate from the illustration, warm against her fingertips. Rachel, don't. Mrs. Whitmore warned, pulling on her sleeve, but it was too late. As Rachel's fingers brushed against the paper, the shadows recoiled momentarily, as if scorched by a dim light. Time hung suspended, seconds stretching as she felt a faint connection spark to life. Images flooded her mind, laughter, joy, sunlight streaming through trees. But it twisted quickly. Darkness crept in, a tide of fear and despair. She saw Lucy, pleading, eyes wide, as Tommy beckoned from the shadows. The pervasive grip of evil hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Lucy, Rachel whispered, the name barely escaping. The moment shattered as the hooded figures lunged forward. Screams erupted from both Rachel and Mrs. Whitmore, but the sound was swallowed by the shadows writhing around them. A surge of energy consumed Rachel, pulling her into a chasm of obscurity. Help! She screamed, but it was lost, echoing into the abyss, and then, Ryan stepped through the doorway behind them, wide-eyed and immediately caught in their turmoil. What is going on? He took a step forward, unaware of the danger lurking just beyond his line of sight, where shadows pulsed and chuckled. Ryan, no! Rachel tried to shout, but the shadows folded over his form, melting him into the black, snuffing out the light with merciless glee. Rachel's heart stopped. Panic clawed at her throat. This can't be happening. We have to fight back. We can't. The creature surged forward, eyes aglow with a sickening hunger, and suddenly everything went dark. The world faded into nothingness, echoing with secrets and laughter that sent shivers racing down her spine. Rachel felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just fear, it was resolve. The shadows could not take everything. She wouldn't let them. Find Lucy. She yelled, heart pounding as she gathered every ounce of courage and plunged deeper into the darkness, searching for the missing little girl, but as the shadows swirled around her, whispers erupted in her ears, you cannot resist, you belong to us now. Where would they lead her next? What kind of darkness awaited in the unknown? Rachel plunged forward, the darkness a crushing weight around her. Each step felt like wading through a thick sludge, hot anxiety coursing through her veins. What had happened to Ryan? The image of his startled face, swallowed by the shadows, burned into her mind. She had to find Lucy. It was all that mattered. Around her, the whispers twisted into a cacophony, their chilling tones mixing with guttural laughter. Join us, they taunted, brushing cold fingers against her skin, igniting a frenzy of goosebumps down her arms. Her heart hammered as she fought the mounting despair howling in her mind, forcing herself to stay focused. Lucy! She shouted, desperation fueling her voice. Where are you? The shadows shifted, swirling restlessly, their energy palpable as darkness ebbed and flowed like a tide. For a brief moment, a sliver of light flickered ahead. It was dim, almost hopeful, yet as she moved closer, she realized it was a picture, the same one she had seen before. Lucy's radiant smile danced within the confines of the shadowy realm. But her smile twisted, morphing into a grimace of terror as darkness enveloped the edges of the drawing. Rachel hesitated, the image invoking both comfort and dread. She could see the outline of Lucy in the distance, shrinking away from the terrifying figure of Tommy. With every ounce of willpower she had, Rachel lunged toward the picture, hoping to grasp whatever power it held. "Get away from her!" Rachel screamed, recognizing the brutality of Tommy's laughter that echoed in her ears. She could feel the entity surging behind her, its breath hot and rancid against her neck, urging her to stop, to turn back. "Foolish girl," it hissed, its voice slithering into her mind like a venomous serpent. "You cannot break the bond of darkness." Rachel's pulse quickened as she glimpsed Lucy again, the small child now cornered, shivering in the shadows. "I'm coming, Lucy." With renewed vigor, Rachel fought against the consuming despair, reaching for the drawing. The moment her fingers brushed the paper, energy crackled around her. Light emanated violently, forcing the encroaching shadows to recoil, screaming in agony. For a fleeting instant, Rachel felt invincible. But as quickly as the light burst forth, it faded, leaving her with a stark sense of emptiness. She fell to her knees, desperation clawing at her throat. "Lucy, I need you to help me," she cried, tears streaking her face, mingling with the sinking despair around her. Suddenly, a faint flicker caught her attention, a vision. It wasn't just Lucy anymore, it was the ghostly figure of Mrs. Whitmore standing in the distance, pleading with wide eyes. "Rachel! The key! The key to break their hold!" "What key?" Rachel yelled, panic tightening her chest, but her cry was silenced as the echoes of that dreadful laughter returned, a chorus of malice swelling from all sides. The shadows closed in again, but this time, they tugged at her thoughts, wrestling with her memories. Visions of home, of laughter and warmth, crumbled into nightmares, each scene morphing into horror. She gasped as Tommy's face appeared before her, distorted and grim. "You will never escape us. We will tear you apart." Fueled by a primal surge, Rachel staggered to her feet. "No. You won't take me." She felt something new rise within her, something primal that defied the oppressive darkness. The shadows hissed as they rippled, momentarily revealing a path of fragmented vision of light ahead. "Lucy!" Rachel called once more, fear dissipating, replaced by an unyielding drive for survival. As she sprinted toward that flickering glimmer of hope, she made a silent vow to find the key and save them both, but lurking in the shadows, unseen by Rachel, the creature fixed its ember-like eyes upon her retreating form. "You think you can outpace fate," it whispered, a promise of more terror to come. Ahead lay a choice that would test her resolve and sanity. Could she unravel the truth behind the key before succumbing to the shadows? The darkness responded with a deafening roar, vibrating through her bones. But what awaited? At the end of that light? Would it be salvation or her undoing? Rachel's heart raced as she followed the flickering light, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The whispers pressed closer, wrapping around her like a thick fog, each voice more menacing than the last. Join us," the taunts dug into her mind, but she couldn't afford to listen. She had to reach Lucy. She stumbled forward, clutching the drawing, the faint warmth of the fading light still tingling at her fingertips. But just ahead, the path split, two shadows branching off in different directions. Fear gripped her. Which way? Both seemed to lead into the depths of despair, where Tommy's laughter echoed ominously. "Lucy!" she screamed, hoping her voice would pierce the darkness. The shadows flickered and twisted, revealing chilling glimpses of twisted faces and grotesque forms. Something shifted behind her, a presence so sinister she could feel it scrape against her skin. She forced herself to turn and look. Just a glimpse of its shadow, something tall and gnarled, with fingers like talons. A shiver ran down her spine. "No," she whispered, fighting to maintain control. "No, no, no!" Fighting her instincts, Rachel forced herself to the left, the brighter of the two paths, even as the other beckoned with enticing whispers, promising power and protection. She sprinted down the corridor of illumination, praying that it would lead her to Lucy. But the path grew darker with each step. The light pulsed, dimming, as if it too were affected by the shadows surrounding her. Voices surrounded her again, shrill and mocking. "You will never find her. You will lose your way just like you lost her. Shut up." She cried back, anger fueling her as much as fear. Suddenly, the ground beneath her shifted, a soft tremor that sent her crashing to her knees. The drawing slipped from her hands and skidded away, settling out of sight in the shadowy depths. Panic surged. She crawled toward where the picture had fallen, hands outstretched as she groped in the darkness. She could feel the coldness of the shadows closing around her, like a serpent tightening its grip. "Lucy!" She called again, her voice hoarse. "Please, I'm here." But it was the chilling giggle echoing around her that froze her blood. With a shuddering breath, Rachel stood and turned, her mind racing. What had she unleashed? A sweep of darkness rustled around her, palpable and heavy, turning the very air suffocating. Her heart thundered. "What are you?" she demanded at the shadows, her voice strong, though fear snaked through her veins. A ripple across the air, and then a soft voice floated into her ear, a sinister whisper that made her shudder. "I am what you fear, I am your reckoning." In that moment, flashes of her past ignited in her mind, days spent lost in her thoughts, moments of indecision, allowing herself to hide while others bore the weight of reality. The shadows seized on each memory, warping them into grotesque forms, hissing, "Will you abandon her just like you abandoned them?" "No!" Rachel shouted, shaking her head as against the deluge of guilt. But the darkness only tightened, transforming the corridor into a frightful maze. Pulling at her, tugging her towards despair. Each step felt heavier, like quicksand reaching up to snare her ankles. Then, a spark, an ephemeral glimpse of Lucy's face, eyes wide, desperate. "Help me! Rachel! Lucy!" It was a plea laced with panic. Rachel stumbled forward, her limbs trembling with determination. She needed to break through the shadows, to find the key, whatever that meant. Suddenly, from behind her, a voice reignited her fear. "Join us!" it cried, shrill and mocking. "Join the lost. You can be part of the darkness." In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited her resolve. She had to keep going. She had to find that key. Clenching her fists, she took a breath and pressed forward through the suffocating dark, refusing to give in to the whispers clawing at her sanity. But right there, in the distance, a piercing scream echoed again. This time it was unmistakably Lucy's, reverberating through the darkness. Rachel's heart dropped. What waited for her at the end of the path? Would she be able to save Lucy, or would she fall victim to the terrors lurking just beyond sight? The shadows grew thicker, seething with a malicious intent. And as Rachel neared, a choice loomed ahead, one that would either lead them to freedom or plunge them further into despair. The air grew colder as Rachel pressed on, the clamor of whispers tightening their grip around her throat. She could feel the suffocating weight of the darkness pushing against her chest, crushing her resolve. Lucy's voice rang through the shadows again, desperate and frightened. "Please, Rachel. I'm so scared. Hold on, Lucy. I'm coming." The words tumbled from her lips, though deep down she wasn't sure she could keep that promise. The sharp edges of despair rattled against her mind like a dark shroud tangled in her thoughts. Panic clawed at her, but she pushed back against it. She could not allow fear to break her. Not now, not when Lucy needed her. The path twisted beneath her feet, and with every step, the walls of darkness squeezed tighter, threatening to swallow her whole. Churning echoes of laughter rang in her ears, a cruel mockery. "You'll never escape. You'll never find her." Images of her past flickered through her mind like lightning, memories twisted into grotesque visages. She had abandoned friends when they needed her most, choosing solitude over connection. The shadows barbed those memories, dragging her further into anguish. "Leave me alone," she screamed as she stumbled. Her voice quivered, partly from rage, but mostly from fear. She could feel the shadows pressing closer, their breath icy against her skin. From the depths of the darkness, a figure emerged, a slithering silhouette, indistinct but powerful. It hovered, motionless, studying her with unseen eyes. Rachel felt a wave of dread wash over her as it leaned closer. You think you can save her? Why don't you just join us instead? The voice was honeyed, yet full of malice. The shadows pulsed violently, and Rachel could see the faces of those she had wronged before, friends, former lovers, people she'd forgotten. They were twisted, their expressions contorted in a mockery of her guilt. No. She bellowed, forcing herself to take a step back, then another. I'm not like you. You're not real. And yet a flicker of doubt planted itself firmly in her mind. What if they were? What if all of this was her doing? What if, in trying to save Lucy, she only led them both deeper into sorrow? Just as the thought took root, an agonizing scream erupted from the depths. Rachel! Help! It was Lucy again, this time more frantic, a crushing desperation imbued in each note. She rushed forward, ignoring the dread trying to paralyze her legs. I'm right here. She could sense where Lucy's voice came from, near the end of the corridor. Light pooled in a distance, beckoning her with a ghostly glow, a beacon of hope cutting through the encroaching dark. Rachel bolted towards it, but the ground shifted again, pulling her back. The darkness didn't want her to leave. It clung like thick sludge, swallowing her progress, dragging her down. Breathless and desperate, she fought against the growing despair. I won't abandon you, Lucy. She shouted, determination igniting in her core. Gathering every ounce of strength, she broke into a dead sprint. As she pushed through the unyielding shadows, the whispers grew frantic. You can't win. You'll be trapped here forever. Just give in. Each taunt buzzed around her like wasps, stinging her resolve, but the clarity of Lucy's voice surged through her, louder than any fear. Find me. Please. Rachel reached the glowing portal, the very heart of the darkness. She could almost feel its sharp edges reaching out, threatening to curl around her like a predator. But in the brilliance, she saw Lucy huddled and shaking, mere feet away, her eyes pleading for rescue. In that instant, Rachel knew she would face anything for her sister. She took a leap forward, stepping through the luminous veil. But as she crossed the threshold, the eerie laughter escalated into a cacophony of despair. Welcome back to where horrors dwell, a voice sneered from behind her as the light flickered violently, dimming into utter blackness. Rachel's heart sank. Had she truly saved Lucy, or had she just led them both into a trap? As shadows closed in around them, terror gripped her stomach like icy fingers. Lucy! We need to go. Now! But the voice echoed back to her like a dreadful melody. Something flickered just beyond, a darker shadow weaving itself closer. What was it? And how much deeper did the darkness go, ready to consume them both? The moment they stepped through the portal, the air shifted violently, swirling around them like a storm unleashed. Rachel's heart raced, pounding against her ribs. Her eyes darted around, desperate for Lucy, for escape. But the shadows wrapped around them tighter, a living entity coaxing them deeper into its embrace. Lucy, where are you? She cried, voice trembling, half expecting the darkness to answer. I'm right here. Lucy's small, quaking voice replied, barely a whisper carried on the cold wind. Rachel turned, frantically scanning the void, but all she could see were shapes darting just beyond her reach, teasing her with the promise of familiarity before slipping away. Lucy! Panic surged in her chest, twisting like a knife. She felt the icy fingers of despair clutching at her throat again. Hold on. I'm coming. Don't leave me. The desperation in Lucy's voice sliced through Rachel like a blade. Each cry pulled her forward, into the oppressive dark that seemed to grow more sentient, more alive with each step. Suddenly, a figure broke through the fog, its outline sharp and jagged. Rachel froze. It wasn't Lucy. The entity towered above her, a twisted amalgam of faces, each frozen in a scream. She could almost hear the faint echoes of their pleas, drifting on the air like lost spirits. Welcome back, Rachel, it hissed, voice slick with mockery. You thought you could save her? You don't belong here. You never did. The creature's grotesque features morphed, reflecting her deepest fears and regrets. No. She shouted, shaking her head, trying to disperse the visions, the memories clawing their way out of the shadows. She couldn't let it in. Not now. You won't take me. The creature laughed, a sound that resonated in her bones, sending shivers racing down her spine. You chose this path. You chose loneliness. There's no escape now. In that moment of terror, the realization sunk in like a stone. The darkness wasn't just a maze, it was a mirror, reflecting her own failures. The shadows pulsed around her, a living reminder of everything she had abandoned, but Lucy's distant whimper cut through the self-doubt, igniting something fierce in Rachel's chest. No, I'm not alone. I have Lucy. With newfound determination, she surged forward, pushing against dread. I have to find her. The darkness vibrated in fury, intensifying the cacophony of whispers, taunts, and laughter that surrounded her. Join us. Join the lost. Embrace the darkness. But Rachel pressed on, her feet pounding against the floor she couldn't see, each step brought her closer to Lucy's fragile voice. Rachel. Help. The urgency in her sister's voice fueled Rachel's drive. As she rounded a corner, she stumbled upon a small patch of dim light. This time, the softness of it felt different. Instead of something demonic, this light seemed to flow, beckoning her, inviting her with warmth and solace. Lucy! She cried out, half in hope, half in despair, but the moment she reached out toward it, the ground trembled beneath her, and the light flickered violently. The laughter crescendoed into a furious roar, warning her of the heartbreak waiting just beyond that fragile glow. Don't touch it. It'll trap you. The warning came from nowhere and everywhere all at once. Rachel hesitated, the warmth fading to a chilling touch. What if this was just another trap, another illusion designed to lure her deeper? She cared for nothing but Lucy now, and with that thought, she crossed the threshold toward the light, her surroundings morphed as she stepped inside. The whispers faded, but the darkness didn't retreat, it slashed at her back like a wounded beast. She gasped, feeling a thin, frigid layer of air crackle just behind her. Had she truly found Lucy, or had she blindly walked into a new nightmare? She turned to find the way they entered was gone. An impenetrable blackness closed off any chance of retreat, leaving Rachel stranded in an unfamiliar place. What have I done? She whispered, heart racing as something shifted in the depths behind her. The echo answered, the darkness resettling, searching, lurking. Something was there, waiting, breathing heavily in the dark. The grip of terror tightened around her heart. What was it? What had she unleashed? Lucy, where are you? Rachel murmured again, desperation rising with each heartbeat. But no answer came, only the sound of footsteps, and the stirring shadows breathed a quiet promise of something dreadful yet to come. What else lied in wait, ready to claim them both? The room flickered, shadows flying with the quick tension of a heartbeat. Rachel's heart raced as the darkness pulsed, pressing against her, squeezing her chest. A cold sweat coated her skin. I want to let you take my daughter. She shouted into the void, grounding herself in the fight for Lucy. The shadows writhed, encircling her like whispers of regret, unveiling vicious memories that twisted like knives in her gut. She wrestled with the recognition of the faces swirling within the darkness, her failures, the connections she had shattered through her complacency. Guilt threatened to pull her under, dragging her into despair, but she paused, drawing strength from the fierce love for her daughter. I'm not alone. She screamed, her voice fierce and unwavering. You don't scare me. Light flickered again, wavering, not to be mistaken for the darkest shadows they battled. It danced, lingering, pulling at her focus. It was Lucy's spirit, bold and bright, shining through the tendrils of darkness. Mommy, help. The call rang clear, anchoring Rachel's resolve. She surged forward, the light shimmering just ahead, revealing a small glimpse of hope amid the engulfing terror. But the entity behind her grew stronger, louder, reverberating through the chamber. Join us, Rachel. You belong here. It crooned, its voice swift like poison, deceitful and willing to drag her into eternal night. No. She bellowed, anger sparking through her veins. I will not submit. The pulse of promise surged within her as she recalled Lucy's sweet laughter, the innocence of her drawings, and the warmth of those summer nights. Lucy. Rachel pushed through the damp air, shadows clawing at her back, urging her to retreat into the comfort of despair. But she pressed on, charging toward her daughter's voice, her will fueled by something more potent than fear-love. Love cradled by determination. Ahead, she finally caught sight of Lucy huddled, trembling, a fragile silhouette against the shadows. Help me, Mommy. The urgency in her voice sliced through Rachel's heart, igniting an inferno of resolve. She could not fail. Not now. Hold on, sweetheart. Rachel dove forward, the light illuminating the space, guiding her toward her daughter. Shadows seethed and shrieked in protest, the darkness thrumming with rage. A figure dashed toward her from the backdrop, sharp and malevolent, a grotesque form seeking to shove Rachel back, to drown her cries in despair. Get away from her. Rachel howled, stumbling through the shadows, grasping toward Lucy with trembling hands. The air vibrated with sharp electricity, the darkness recoiling slightly at her fury. It was the sliver of courage coursing through her veins that sent bolts of light dancing around her, forcing back the engulfing shadows. With her last push, Rachel reached out, her fingers barely grazing Lucy's wrist. I'm here. We're going home. She cried, pulling her daughter against her as the shadows contorted and flailed, screeching in agony. They whirled together, surrounded by radiant white light, slicing through the darkness. But the force of rage and despair intensified, a whirlwind of shadow buffeting violently around them. The air pulsed, and for a moment, all felt suspended in an electric freeze. Do you really believe you can escape? The entity hissed, thunder rumbling through the air, darkness surging around them like a tidal wave. We already have. Rachel growled, clenching Lucy's hand tightly, feeling the warmth reassuringly return. Light will always cut through the dark. In one fierce sweep, Rachel conjured all her love, determination, and fierce maternal instinct, unleashing it into the light. An explosion erupted, pushing the shadows back and igniting the space in a blinding glow. Stay close. She shouted, yanking Lucy toward the exit that shimmered into view, a way out flanked by fierce, roiling energies. She could feel the tug of the darkness on her as they broke through the threshold together, grasping onto one another. As they burst free, the world outside welcomed them with familiar autumn leaves, crisp and bright against the dawning light. The neighborhood stood bathed in warmth, reprieved from the darkness that had once encased them. The laughter of children filtered through the cool air, joyous and carefree, a sound fueled by innocence returning. Mommy. Lucy beamed, her spirit brightening as the darkness faded into mere shadows beneath their feet. The neighborhood felt alive, a symphony of color returning, carrying the warmth of hope. Rachel knelt, wrapping Lucy tightly in her arms, tears streaming down her cheeks both for fear and relief. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Are we safe now? Lucy asked, eyes wide with innocence, the colors of her drawing vibrant in her tiny hands. For now, Rachel whispered, glancing back toward the trees where shadows lingered in quiet, mournful shapes. But we will never be alone again. In that moment, with Lucy cradled close, Rachel promised herself that the subversive threat was not gone, merely prolonged. They would stay vigilant, protecting their sanctuary. Whatever lurked in the shadows would not win again. Their hands intertwined, faces hopeful, they walked toward their home, ready to reclaim their lives from the lingering threads of whispers. With each step, Rachel felt stronger, more determined. They had conquered the darkness once, and they would do it again, together. But as daylight bathed the edge of Maplewood, the shadows still danced, waiting patiently, knowing this was only a battle won in a much larger war. And Rachel knew well light could flicker, but darkness never truly slept. Now, every heartbeat thrummed with renewed urgency. They had escaped this time, and the fight was not over. Rachel took a deep breath. The future stretched ahead, uncertain yet hopeful. It was a beginning, and she was ready. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to our channel to catch the next exclusive stories and find out what happens next. Smash that like button now, it really helps the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see how this gripping tale unfolds. This is your chance to be part of our amazing community. Join us today.